My mother-in-law demanded to plan my wedding, so I let her spend $25,000 before revealing I'd eloped. Valencia Hawthorne treated wedding planning like a military operation. The moment Garrett slipped the ring on my finger, she appeared with color-coded binders and a spreadsheet that could have run NASA. The Hawthorne family has standards, she declared, flipping through venue photos like a general reviewing battle plans. This wedding will be talked about for decades. I suggested something small and intimate. She looked at me like I'd suggested we get married in a McDonald's bathroom. Nonsense. We're booking the Grandview Mansion. Spring wedding. 500 guests minimum. I have a reputation to maintain. The planning consumed her entirely. She scheduled appointments without consulting me, booked vendors based on price tags rather than preference, and dismissed every suggestion I made with a patronizing smile. You're so young, sweetie. You don't understand what makes a wedding elegant. The budget exploded immediately. Hand-engraved invitations on Italian paper, $3,200. Crystal chandeliers for the reception, $4,800. A dress she selected without my input, $5,500. Each expense came with lectures about family legacy and social expectations. This is an investment in your future standing in society, she'd explain while writing another enormous check. Meanwhile, Garrett and I grew increasingly frustrated, watching her orchestrate what felt more like a corporate merger than a celebration of love. We wanted something personal, not a performance. 4 months into her planning obsession, while she was booking a $7,000 ice sculpture shaped like swans, Garrett and I made a spontaneous decision. We drove to the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon with my sister and his best friend as witnesses. We exchanged simple bands and promised forever, while Valencia was probably arguing with florists about centerpiece height requirements. I let her continue planning for 8 more weeks. The final total reached exactly $25,000. She'd booked everything from a celebrity chef to bathroom attendants to a horse-drawn carriage for my grand entrance. 3 days before her elaborate production, I invited both families for what I called a final wedding briefing. Valencia arrived with laminated schedules, emergency protocols, and detailed instructions for every family member's role in her masterpiece. Before we review tomorrow's timeline, I announced, placing my phone on the dining table, I have something important to share with everyone. I displayed our marriage certificate, dated 10 weeks earlier. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Valencia stared at the document, her face transforming from confusion to rage, to something much more dangerous. You're already married? She whispered, her voice deadly calm. For 2.5 months now, Garrett confirmed, taking my hand protectively. Her carefully maintained composure shattered completely. You manipulative little snake. Do you realize what you've done to me? I realize I got married to the man I love, I replied steadily. Everything else was your choice. She stood slowly, gathering her purse with trembling hands. $25,000. Gone, because of your deception. Actually, I said, sliding a thick folder across the table, I documented every expense. Here are copies of all receipts, contracts, and payment confirmations. Valencia opened the folder, scanning vendor agreements and credit card statements with growing horror. This was planned, she hissed. You orchestrated this humiliation deliberately. I orchestrated getting married, I corrected. You orchestrated everything else without asking what we actually wanted. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and dialed a number. Detective Rodriguez, this is Valencia Hawthorne. I need to report a major fraud case. $25,000. I watched her pace to the corner, speaking in urgent whispers. My father-in-law, Franklin, silent throughout this exchange, finally cleared his throat. Valencia, he said quietly. Hang up the phone. She spun around, fury blazing. Absolutely not. They've stolen from us, Franklin. This is criminal behavior. No, he said, his voice gaining strength. What's criminal is spending our money without discussing it with anyone, including me. For the first time in 32 years of marriage, Franklin had contradicted his wife publicly. Valencia's mouth fell open. Detective Rodriguez's tinny voice came through her speaker, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ma'am, spending your own money on a party that doesn't happen isn't fraud. It's poor planning. She hung up and whirled back to face us. This isn't over. I'll sue you for emotional distress. Valencia. My mother's voice cut through the threat like a blade. Stop. Mom pulled out her phone and began scrolling. You want to talk about emotional distress? Let's discuss how you've treated my daughter for 6 months. She read from her notes. October 15th. You told vendors that the bride's family couldn't afford to contribute meaningfully. November 3rd. You suggested my daughter's education was adequate for someone from our background. Valencia's face went white. I never said. I have witnesses, Mom said simply. And screenshots. Dad, a retired judge, leaned back with his courtroom expression. In all this talk of fraud, nobody's mentioned that you signed contracts using our children's names without authorization. The implications hit Valencia like a physical blow. Franklin was nodding slowly. He's right. You forged our son's signature on at least 4 contracts. I was helping. You were committing forgery, Dad said matter-of-factly. Valencia sank into her chair, the fight suddenly gone. But I wasn't finished. There's something else you all need to know, I said, reaching for another folder. I spread out bank statements and credit reports. While you were spending $25,000 on a wedding, Garrett and I discovered some interesting things about the family finances. Franklin leaned forward, suddenly alert. What kind of things? 3 home equity loans in the past 18 months. Total debt, $847,000. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Franklin's face went ashen. That's impossible. I would have had to sign. You did sign, I said, sliding over documents. But look at the dates. He examined them with growing horror. These signatures, I don't remember, because you were in the hospital after your heart attack. Valencia brought you papers. Told you they were insurance forms. Franklin stared at his wife with complete betrayal. You took out loans while I was sedated? Valencia's defense crumbled. It was for the family. The business needed capital. What business? We sold the company 2 years ago. That's when the real story emerged. Valencia had been maintaining the illusion of wealth long after their actual situation deteriorated. The family business had been sold to cover previous debts. The elegant apartment was mortgaged to the maximum. The investment portfolio? Franklin asked weakly. Fake statements, I confirmed. She's been creating them on her computer. Valencia had stolen $67,000 meant for investments, spending it on charity galas and country club memberships to maintain her social standing. I needed you to stop worrying about money, she told Franklin desperately. I was investing in our social capital. Franklin stood abruptly. 32 years of marriage, and I'm just now seeing who you really are. Penelope, Garrett's younger sister, had been silent throughout. Now she spoke up. I'm moving out tonight, and I'm contesting every signature you forged with my name. Me too, Garrett said. We're hiring lawyers tomorrow. Valencia's mask finally slipped completely. You're all ungrateful. I've sacrificed everything to give this family class and status. Whose status? I interrupted. You've humiliated yourself, committed multiple felonies, and destroyed your relationships with your husband and children. You did this, she hissed, pointing at me. No, I said calmly. I got married. Everything else was your choice. Franklin walked to the window, staring at the garden he'd cultivated. When he turned back, his expression was resolved. I want a divorce. Even Valencia looked shocked. Valencia, you've committed crimes against our children. You've destroyed our financial security. You've lied repeatedly about major decisions. He paused, gathering strength. And tonight, when confronted with consequences, your first instinct was to call police about a crime that didn't exist. Penelope stood and took her father's arm. Dad, you can stay with me tonight. We'll figure this out together, Garrett added. Valencia looked around at her family, all united against her, finally grasping what she'd lost. I can fix this, she said desperately. Just give me a chance. You had chances, Franklin said gently. Every day for months you had chances to be honest, to include us in decisions, to treat your daughter-in-law with respect. He collected his coat. I'll be back tomorrow with a lawyer. As they filed out, Valencia called out one last time. You'll regret this. When you see how hard life is without the connections I've built. I turned back to look at her, sitting alone in the dining room she'd decorated with furniture she couldn't afford. Valencia, I said quietly, we never wanted your status. We just wanted your acceptance. 6 months later, the wreckage was still being sorted. Franklin filed for divorce. The house was in foreclosure. Penelope moved across the country for graduate school, using distance to establish financial independence. Valencia declared bankruptcy and moved in with her sister in Ohio. The wedding vendors had been surprisingly understanding. The caterer refunded half the deposit. The florist donated arrangements to nursing homes. Only the dress shop refused accommodation, suggesting I should have controlled my family better. I left them a detailed online review explaining exactly what happened. Other customers began sharing stories about pushy relatives and unsupportive vendors. The shop closed 3 months later. Detective Rodriguez actually called me weeks later, laughing about Valencia's continued attempts to report our crimes. She tried to convince me you'd forged your own marriage certificate, he said, as if the courthouse was part of some conspiracy. The most surprising outcome was my relationship with Penelope. Before the disaster, we'd been polite but distant. Watching her stand up to Valencia revealed strength I'd never seen. I'm poor, but I'm free, she told me during a video call from Oregon. And it turns out I really like being poor and free. She'd started a blog about financial recovery that gained surprising following. Other children of financially irresponsible parents shared their stories. Mom always talked about social standing as something we inherited, Penelope observed. But I have better networking now than when she was buying our way into circles. Garrett took longer to process everything. He struggled with guilt over his mother's behavior and sadness over his parents' divorce. I keep thinking I should have seen it sooner, he'd say. You weren't raised to question your mother's judgment, I replied. That's not your fault. His relationship with Franklin grew stronger than ever. I'm getting to know my dad as a person instead of just my mother's husband, he explained. Franklin, meanwhile, discovered happiness he'd forgotten existed. He sold his remaining assets, settled legitimate debts, and bought a cottage near the ocean. I should have done this 20 years ago, he told us over dinner. I couldn't see past the life she'd convinced me we needed. He was learning to cook, taking art classes, and dating a retired teacher who drove a 15-year-old Honda and thought expensive restaurants were wasteful. She makes me laugh, he said simply. I'd forgotten what that felt like. A year after our courthouse wedding, we celebrated our anniversary properly. We invited Franklin and his girlfriend, Penelope, my parents, my sister, and close friends to Franklin's backyard. The total cost was $300. We grilled burgers, played games, and told stories. To new traditions, Franklin toasted. To authentic relationships, Dad added. To choosing your own path, Penelope contributed. To families you create instead of inherit, Mom said. Garrett and I looked at our chosen family, people who'd become our real support system, to learning that the best weddings focus on the marriage, I concluded. 3 years later, we received an unexpected visitor. Valencia stepped out of an old Honda, looking smaller and older than I remembered. She wore simple clothes, her hair in a ponytail, no designer armor. I know I should have called, she said quietly, but I was afraid you'd say no. Garrett appeared in the doorway, his face cycling through emotions before settling on cautious neutrality. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? We sat on the porch. She declined iced tea. I've been in therapy, she began. Real therapy. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and pathological spending disorder. She reached into her purse and pulled out folded paper. I've been working on this for 6 months. A complete accounting of every financial decision that affected your lives. The list was several pages long, handwritten carefully. I'm also paying back what I can. I work retail in Ohio, sending money monthly to everyone I defrauded. It'll take years, but I'm committed. She looked directly at me. I owe you the biggest apology. I treated you terribly because I saw you as a threat to my control over Garrett. I was wrong. Thank you, I said simply. She turned to Garrett. I stole your autonomy and financial security. I made decisions for your life without consent. I'm sorry. Valencia stood up. That's all I came to say. I'm not asking for relationship or contact. I needed you to know I understand what I did wrong. She paused at the porch steps. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice, both in marrying how you wanted and in cutting me from your lives. You have a beautiful life together. I'm sorry I tried to make it about me. After she drove away, Garrett and I sat in silence. How do you feel? I asked. Confused, he admitted. She seemed different, smaller, more real. Do you think she's changed? Maybe, but that doesn't mean we have to let her back into our lives. We learned later through Penelope that Valencia had remarried to her former therapist, another person in recovery. She was working minimum wage, living modestly, but seemed genuinely calmer. She's like the mom I wanted but never had, Penelope said during one of their cautious video calls. She asks about my life instead of managing it. When our daughter Isabella was born, we created the family structure we'd consciously chosen after escaping Valencia's manipulation. Franklin and Ruth visited monthly, always calling first. My parents maintained weekly video calls. Penelope sent thoughtful packages for every milestone. Friends rallied with meal trains and babysitting. This is what family is supposed to look like, Garrett observed when Isabella was 6 months old. Everyone wanted what was best for Isabella, not what made them feel important. When Isabella started asking questions about family structure in kindergarten, we were prepared. Why don't I have a grandma on Daddy's side? Daddy's mommy made choices that hurt people, I explained carefully, so she doesn't get to be part of our family right now. Will she ever be? Maybe someday. But first she has to learn better choices. And we have to make sure you're safe. Isabella understood that some adults make choices affecting their ability to be in families. She wasn't confused or distressed by her paternal grandmother's absence. When Isabella turned 8, she asked to read the letter Valencia had written for her years earlier. My dear Isabella, it began, I am your father's mother, which makes me your grandmother. I cannot be part of your life because I made bad choices that hurt your father and others. This has nothing to do with you. You are perfect exactly as you are, and you deserve to grow up in a safe, happy family. Your parents are protecting you by keeping me away. I think about you often and hope you are learning and growing. I hope you know how much you are loved by the people who take care of you every day. Someday, if I can prove I've learned better choices, maybe we'll meet. But if that never happens, I want you to know that I love you and I'm proud of your parents for putting your well-being first. Isabella read it twice, then looked up. She sounds sad. She probably is, Garrett agreed. It's hard when your choices mean you can't be with people you love. But she understands why you protect me? Yes, she does. Isabella folded the letter carefully. Can I write her back? We were surprised by the request. After consulting our therapist, we let Isabella craft a brief response. Dear Grandmother Valencia, thank you for the letter. I am happy and safe and love my family very much. I hope you are getting better and not too sad. I hope someday you can make good choices. I am not angry at you. I understand that grown-ups sometimes have problems that make it hard to be good family members. Love, Isabella. We sent it through Penelope, who delivered it via Valencia's therapist. The response was a photo of Valencia in her Target uniform, smiling genuinely. On the back, thank you for the letter. I am working hard every day to be someone worthy of your kindness. No return address. No request for more correspondence. Just acknowledgement and gratitude. When Isabella turned 12, she surprised us at dinner. I want to meet Grandmother Valencia. What's prompting that? I asked carefully. My friend Sophia met her biological father for the first time. She said it was awkward, but good. It answered questions she didn't know she had. What questions do you have? I want to see if she seems like the person in her letters. And I want her to see that I turned out okay even though she couldn't help raise me. That's a big decision, Garrett said. I want it somewhere public, with you guys there, for like an hour, not a whole day. What would you hope to get out of it? I want to know if she's actually sorry or just saying what people want to hear. How would you tell the difference? By how she acts with you guys, Isabella said with surprising insight. If she's really changed, she won't try to manipulate you into giving her more access to me. 3 months later, we sat in a neutral restaurant waiting for Valencia. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Smaller, grayer, dressed simply. She moved tentatively, without the commanding presence that used to fill rooms. "Hello," she said quietly when she reached us. "You must be Isabella." "Hello, Grandmother Valencia," Isabella replied politely. Valencia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "Thank you for wanting to meet me, and thank you," she said to us, "for allowing this." The conversation was remarkably natural. Isabella asked about Valencia's work. Valencia asked about school. They discovered shared love of reading. Valencia didn't ask probing questions or make comments about missed time. She followed Isabella's lead completely. "Do you like living with your new husband?" Isabella asked with childhood directness. "I do. He's very kind, and he helps me remember to make good choices." "Are you good at making good choices with help?" "I'm getting better. It takes practice." When Isabella excused herself for the restroom, Valencia turned to us with profound gratitude. "She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job raising her. I don't expect this to change anything," she continued quickly. "I don't want you to think I'm using this meeting to ask for more access. I just wanted to see her once, to know she's okay." When Isabella returned, Valencia stood up. "I should go. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "Already?" Isabella looked disappointed. "Your parents were generous to allow me this time. I want to respect their rules." Isabella hugged her. A quick, polite hug that Valencia received with visible restraint. On the drive home, Isabella was quiet. "What did you think?" I asked. She seemed sad but not scary, and she didn't try to make you guys feel bad for keeping her away. "Any regrets about meeting her?" "No. I'm glad I know what she looks like, and I'm glad she knows I'm okay." "Do you want to see her again?" Isabella considered seriously. "Maybe in a few years, when I'm older and can make my own decisions about relationships." "I understand now why you had to keep her away when I was little," she said eventually. "She's not mean or evil, but she's fragile. Like, she might make bad choices if things got complicated. I can handle talking to her for an hour in a restaurant, but I wouldn't want her babysitting me or being responsible for me." Isabella had reached the same conclusion we had, that love alone isn't enough to make someone safe and reliable. The meeting became a turning point, but not how we'd expected. Instead of opening the door to relationship, it closed the door on uncertainty. Isabella had satisfied her curiosity and confirmed our judgment about Valencia's limitations. She no longer wondered what she might be missing. "She's a real person now instead of a mystery," Isabella explained later. "And she's exactly the kind of person you wouldn't want to leave a kid with. Not because she's mean, but because she can't be trusted to put someone else's needs first." Over the following years, Isabella sent Valencia birthday cards. Simple, friendly greetings that acknowledged connection without encouraging deeper contact. When Isabella graduated high school as valedictorian, she sent Valencia a photo and graduation speech copy. "I want her to see that I turned out well, not because of anything she did, but because it might make her feel less sad." Valencia's response: "I am so proud of the young woman you've become." No request for photos. No invitation demands. No attempt to claim credit. "She's learned to celebrate my achievements without trying to be part of them," Isabella said. "That's probably the healthiest relationship we could have." When Isabella got engaged at 25, she asked our opinion about inviting Valencia to the wedding. "It's your day," Garrett said. "What would you hope to gain?" "I want her to see that I've learned to choose good people. And I want Marcus to meet the grandmother who couldn't raise me, but still loves me." Valencia attended, sitting in the back row with David. Simple dress, arrived on time, left immediately after the ceremony without approaching the receiving line. Her note, the following week: "Your wedding was perfect, joyful, authentic, and full of love. Thank you for including me. Seeing you surrounded by people who love and support you was the greatest gift." She got it exactly right, Isabella said. Present but not intrusive, grateful but not demanding. When Isabella and Marcus had their daughter Hope, they sent Valencia a birth announcement along with other extended family. Valencia's response: "Congratulations on Hope's arrival. She's beautiful and blessed to have wonderful parents." No visit requests. No offers to help. No attempts to establish active grandmother status. "She's learned that loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even if that doesn't include you," Isabella observed. Isabella plans to handle Hope's eventual questions about Valencia the same way we handled hers, through honest, age-appropriate conversations emphasizing family choice and personal safety. Hope will know she has a great-grandmother who loves her but can't be part of daily life. And when she's curious, we'll handle that just like you handled my curiosity. Looking at the life we've built, the relationships we've chosen, the boundaries we've maintained, the love we've cultivated, Garrett's recent observation rings true. The wedding disaster was the best thing that ever happened to us. It taught us that we could choose our own path. Valencia's $25,000 wedding disaster led to discoveries that changed everything: financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and her fundamental inability to prioritize others' well-being over her own desires. But it also led to growth, healing, and creation of a family structure based on mutual respect rather than obligation or control. All of us learned that family is something you create through choices, not inherit through circumstances. The courthouse wedding we chose cost $40 and lasted 15 minutes. It was perfect because it was ours. The life we built afterward, choosing our traditions, setting our boundaries, creating our definition of family, has been perfect because it's ours too. Sometimes the most important word you can learn is no. Sometimes the most important thing you can learn is walking away from people who love you but can't love you safely. Valencia's $25,000 wedding taught us both lessons. It was worth every penny she spent.